in the States for PhD, as usual, being a typical Indian, that means you would be thinking in terms of, in a sense, daydreaming, or thinking in terms of some kind of model. And then the professor would be asking that, well, have you thought about data? I said, no, this is not how it works, because you might have a very brilliant theory, but again, like when you apply it to the data, you are not getting anything that you wanted to get, right? Because when you are applying, you expect to get some results. But if the results are not supporting the theory, then again, you are dead in a way. Okay. So what I suggest to all my PhD students and also some of my co-authors who are already PhD, they are professors in some other universities, if they want to work, and the first thing I ask them, okay, tell me what type of data you have, what is unique in the data. Okay, if the data is not unique, then theory has to be, somehow developed, or not exactly the same thing that we're using. But for example, the type of model that I have discussed so far, okay, I mean, this is not the whole list of models, because again, I told you that we started in 1977, and this is 2025 or 24 if you want to stop in December. So there are a lot of developments that were going on. I limited myself to only a few of them, because this is kind of an introductory type thing. The book that I was referring to, this is second book, which is Stochastic Frontier Model with SCADA. If you get hold of that book, you will see that all the SCADA codes are given in there. So you don't have to actually look at what Dr. Joginder was talking about. I mean, you have all the codes in there, okay? And those are, you don't have to type in, electronic version of the codes are also available. I made everything to, works. Then I may be also able to run some of the codes. Otherwise, I would be showing you the codes which are coming from the book directly. Or the other thing you can do, it depends on what is your interest. I mean, you can just do a Google search. For example, if you want to use SCADA, then you can just type stochastic frontier in SCADA, and then you will find many different places where SCADA codes are given. So SF cross is one of those things. The code that we use in the book is not SF cross. It is SFA or SF. So again, just like name, you cannot call by a name, and that is designed for SF cross. Okay. So orientation is not part of the course in other packages. There is a default, which is production function, and if you are using cost function, that is plus sign, then you have to add cost. So again, and then other way of doing is just orientation. Right? So there might be little differences here and there, but these are all kind of part of SCADA. Okay. Now, if you are interested in using R, then again you can just type to those types of things. That means stochastic frontier in R. There are not that many codes, but all the basic codes for estimating standard models are also available in R. Okay. So it depends on what package you are interested in using. But my advice to you is that whatever you do, if you learn R, that is going to be kind of an investment that has a payoff. So whatever work you do, I mean, you don't have to be a professor, but again, if you work for a company and they also value that knowledge of R, because most of the companies are nowadays moving in that direction because the software is free. Okay. And again, like the people, the newer generation, they are coming up with the knowledge of using R. So again, this is something that you might consider, investing some time. Okay. The problem of using the standard packages is that somebody has to write it. So you are always handicapped, because if somebody is not writing it and you want to do something, this was the problem for me. I wanted to do something, and then I didn't know how to program. So then again, Whereas if you know how to program it, you get the advantage. You can get the papers published a lot before someone else who is relying on people to write codes. So now when I work, I always look for people who can write codes. And again, because of my experience, I'm not saying age, but age is related to experience. So I know people all over the world, so I know who are good programmers, who are good in theory. So whenever I have those type of ideas that requires more sophisticated coding, I send them so again with this iPad, I just write down my ideas in a couple of pages and then kind of email it to the person, say, well, this is the model that I want to work on. Do you think that you can write the codes? And then if I say that, well, yes, I mean, I get a feel that, well, this can be done or not done, okay? But again, like I always check with the person, and then the next thing is just getting data, okay? So again, like you might get the data first, but again, like for me, most of the time I'm looking for development in the theory. So for that, again, I don't necessarily think in terms of data. But for people like you might be thinking in terms of data first, and then think in terms of what model you want to apply. Okay. So it depends on who you are. I mean, for me, I just spend more time in development of things, development of new tools. So again, I don't necessarily spend time in looking at the data. But again, if I have co-authors, and nowadays again most of papers that I work with have co-authors, and again these co-authors sometimes come with data, sometimes again do the estimation and things like that. So it depends on again at what stage you are. But when you are starting your career, you should be thinking in terms of doing most of the thing by yourself. I mean, you cannot think in terms of the way I'm doing. Because I just I develop the theory and let someone else do the estimation. I mean, you can find people like that, but I would say that you better invest time in learning how to code, at least some of it. Okay. Now, again, in SCADA, you can also do codes yourself, but then again, you have to know SCADA a little bit more. I mean, it's just not standard packages. There is something behind this thing. So SCADA ADO file, ADO, and that's where this program is done. So anyway, so this is it because it's closer? Or, okay. Okay, so let me then, instead of talking about those things, but again, those are useful things because somebody has to tell people that, okay, this is what you need to do, and now nobody told me that, that's why I'm telling you that you don't want to go through the type of problems that people encounter, okay. So non-standard application, that means, I'm going to talk about some situations where you may not be interested in estimating a production function, but what I'll be showing you that the tool, the stochastic frontier tool, can be used. So the first thing, just take the pencil out. So the first thing is that think in terms of investment function. So again, from your macro class, you learned that investment is a function of some variables. So I was just thinking in terms of investment in here, and it's a function of Tobin skew, GDP, and things like that. Okay. Now the question is, before you estimate or think in terms of estimating investment function, you might be thinking in terms of a case like that. Do you think that the companies in your sample face some kind of constraint, what we call borrowing constraint? I was talking about constraint again in the last class, so that's similar type of constraint. Okay. So again, the companies want to borrow money, but the bank is not giving them the amount of money that they want. Okay. So then again, their actual investment is going to be, if you think in terms of some optimal, so what would be the relationship between actual investment and optimal investment? Your actual would be less than optimal. So you have this type of thing, that means your actual investment, you write it out like this, IA, this is going to be less than I star. What is I star? This is the optimal, okay, or desired. So again, this is the whole thing that I was talking about, that means if you have inequality, you can make them equal, right, by adding or subtracting something from there, okay, or multiplying, okay. Multiplying by less than 1 or bigger than 1 will make this two sides equal. So let's say that, in this case, what I'm just saying, that since this is less than that, what I can just say that actual investment is optimal minus something. So again, in this case, U is non-negative, okay. Okay, so what happens is that now if I star is defined in this way, it's f of x, and again, like f of x is generic function, that means this is investment function, okay. So again, you know from a textbook or some other papers what are the variables that are used to determine investment. Okay, so if you have cross-sectional data, that means if you have data on individual companies, again at a particular point in time, so you will just write IAI, the subscript I in here for individual companies, and then again this is the optimal investment function, and this is the noise term, and then again this is one-sided error. So should I call this inefficiency? Yes or no? No, because again this is not a production function, this is not inefficiency the way we define input-oriented or output-oriented, right? But it's closely related to that concept, right? So how do we interpret it? You can think of this as a shortfall, investment shortfall. Right? Actual investment is less than optimal, okay, because of the constraint, right? And again, this is in finance literature, this is a big thing, but they don't use the stochastic frontier type tool. They figure out some other ways of determining which companies are constrained, okay. But again, like you see that, this has an advantage of not only finding which company or which companies are constrained, but also the degree of constraint, meaning that by how much investment is less than optimal because of the fact that the companies are facing constraint. Whereas the traditional approaches that are used in the finance literature, they simply identify, okay, firms or companies that are facing constraint or not. They are not able to figure out what is the impact of this constraint, by how much their investment is less. Okay, so stochastic frontier is not only telling you whether the firms are constrained or not, but also you will be able to figure out by how much investment is lower than the optimal because of the constraint. So this is not an inefficiency, but investment shortfall. Okay. But again, like the tool that we'll be using is exactly stochastic frontier. So if you look at this equation, okay, that you have in here, this is nothing but a stochastic frontier. The only thing that we have different variables, right? But that should not bother you. You got your dependent variable is investment instead of output, and the independent variables are not inputs but some other things, right? But those are mathematically again different names, right? Even we talk about y and x in lecture. But when you get to the data, these are not y and x. Y is again some output variable, and x are some input variables. So you don't need to do much other than saying that what are the variables that determine investment. Right? So now if you get a panel, then again let me just write down the model. So again you have I, A, and then put I and T, and then again I'm just simply writing F, X, I, T. And these are again determinants of investments, right? Tobin's Q and many other variables. And then again, like we just write VIT minus UIT. Okay. So again, UIT is going to be the shortfall. Now again, we can specify it in a more flexible way. First thing is that we can add a company-specific effects in here, say alpha I. Okay. So if I write that this is a linear function, let's say this is F is XIT, let me put transpose beta to indicate that there are more than one x variable. I guess you are familiar with matrix and vector. And then again, like you have VIT minus UIT. So what you are doing is, like in the last session, Dr. Joginder was showing you how to include fixed effects, right? But he was showing the model that is kind of redundant nowadays. Nobody uses that. The model where inefficiency is time invariant. So this time invariant part that I wrote in here, this is not inefficiency. This is what I would call form or company effects. So remember I was talking about individual heterogeneity or individual idiosyncrasy or whatever term you want to use. So again, if you want to work for particular companies, you know that these companies are different, not that they are paying you different salaries, but even though again the salaries are the same, you know that working for IBM or working for some other companies, again some people have a feeling that, well, I would like to work for this company because of something, right? So this is captured by this alpha, right? Okay, so this is one dimension that you can add to it. Another dimension is that UIT. So again, like instead of saying that, well, this is you can just say, well, that depends on ZIT, for example. So again, like you can talk about E mean, okay, truncated normal, or even half normal. Okay, but again, there would be again in the half normal part, you can add also determinants, okay, through the variance of U. Okay, so this is one thing, and then again you can also think in terms of, remember the 4-component model that I was talking about. So you can have 3 components, if not 4 components. So UIT, you partition into 2 parts. One is time invariant inefficiency, ADI, and then the other one is, let's put a star in here to separate it from UIT. So this is, first part is time invariant, and then the second part is time varying. And again, what you can do is that you can make this also dependent on some variables. I guess, let me just see. Can you all see the last line? And this can also depend on some other variable, ZIT. Okay. Now to do so, of course, we are talking about a model that requires a lot of information, right? So you need information on investment, you need information on the X variables, you need information on the variables on which inefficiency will depend. Right? If you said, well, this is too much, I don't have those type of information, then again you can just say that, well, theta I is IID with zero mean and constant variance, there is no determinants, and UIT is also, there is no determinants. But of course, again, this is research, we always say that, well, to make it better, or to make it richer, you have to put more in there, right? Otherwise, it will be a simple stuff. Okay, I mean that might be also useful. It depends. Right? Otherwise, again, I was about to give the example of food. So, like today, they had for breakfast the chapati, and I said, "What is sabji?" She said, "No sabji today." So, so what happens is that you can enrich it by adding a lot more vegetable, the type of thing that I was expecting. But again, like you can have only one or none in this case, only dahi. So again, like if you put more, then again the meal is going to be, at least from my point of view, you guys are used to eating only one sabji, but I am used to eating many different types. So to me, that is going to be a richer dish because it has many things in there. So again, like coming back to the main thing is that it depends. You should be looking for more variables. Okay. So then again, I keep on giving you examples like think in terms of reform. The government, again, you can think in terms of state government if you are looking at data from Haryana or Punjab or some other states. Then again, like you think in terms of some kind of reform that the government is introducing, either state government or central government, and then you want to find out the impact of those things on investment. Right? So again, you need to find out something that is interesting, something that people want to know. I mean, if you do something, very few people will be interested in knowing, then again, that's not going to be a hot item, right? To make it hot, remember, think of the newspaper. They put up the stories that people want to hear, right? Like to listen to. So you have to be thinking in terms of that. That means, let's say, well, there are 10 different reforms. You pick up the one that people are more interested in knowing, okay? Or you think the government should know, okay, even though sometimes people are not interested, okay? So again, you can add things in terms of a panel. Nowadays, pretty much every data is panel, okay? So if you go back 30 years or 40 years, there would be very few panel data. When I was doing my dissertation, there was only 2 or 3 data sets that were panel. But now, again, like if you do any cross-sectional model, almost everybody will be saying that, well, why are you doing cross-section? You can get a panel. So things have changed, okay? So because now it's easy to get panel data, okay? No matter whether you are looking at manufacturing or agriculture or like a health or again, name it. I mean, pretty much every place. So the only thing where you can will have difficulty in getting a panel is when you do the survey yourself. Okay. So just like with Banerjee, who got Nobel Prize a couple of years ago, so he would be coming to India with graduate students he has from India. He doesn't bring them from the US. He brings money to pay for the people who are doing the survey. So those are basically cross section, because I don't think that he goes to the same village every year and interview the same individual every year. So he might have, but most of the time he wants to spread the net in going from one part of India to another part. Okay. Okay. So that's basically again like under investment. Okay. So the other important thing that I found recently is working on COVID-19. So again, this was a big thing. Every country was saying that, okay, in terms of reporting, because they have to report it to WHO, or again so what do you think that the country would be doing? Reporting less than the actual number or more? Less, right? So and pretty much everybody, you don't have to be people like us, meaning people like India, from India or Bangladesh or Pakistan, or this part of the region. We have a tendency not to trust, right? So whenever this type of information is given, we immediately say that, well, there might be something going on. There may be some fishy thing going on, okay? Or what do you say, dal mein kuch, what is the dal? Yeah. Meaning that, well, you become, you suspect the data. So in this case, the suspicion is one direction, it's not a noise. Noise meaning that it can go either direction, okay? So here, we know that this is going to be less than that, okay? So this is one thing, and because of that, data was available. There are many different sources. Again, because of the fact that especially for underdeveloped countries or developing countries, because of the stigma associated with that, right? This happens also in developing countries, but it's a lot less, okay? There again, some people might be saying that, okay, you might be faking it and reporting it in the police, but that does not happen that often, right? So again, for cases like this, I mean, if you have a murder, then chances of underreporting is very low, because murder case has to be reported, right? Okay. But again, if you're thinking in terms of rape, then again chances of underreporting is a lot more. So again, you can have a model like what I was talking about, this investment. So rape on the left hand side, the number of cases, okay, and on the right hand side you have determinants. So what do you think? What sort of variables will determinant or be used to explain the number of rapes? Any variable that you think would be explaining?
Number of police complaints.
Okay, or number of police complaint or number of let's say what police forces, right? Okay. Uh, Complaint is what is happening after, but again, like if there are a lot of police, like in the evening, I just saw that there are police everywhere inside the campus. I don't know what they do, but they must be doing something, even though they have a bamboo stick, right? Not a gun or anything like that. So the presence of those type of people will, be a deterrent, right, for crime. I mean, every type of crime. So again, you can think of number of police forces or police officers, or simply number of police. Right? And then again, you can think in terms of unemployment. Okay, if people are unemployed, they have to do something, and they get involved with lots of this illicit activities. And again, crime is one of those. And again, it doesn't matter whether you are looking at rape or burglary or some other types of crime. Okay, so unemployment might be again a factor. So you can think in terms of again some such variables that can be used to explain. Now, if you do econometrics, another good thing is if you throw some variable and you are not so sure about it, whether that explains. I mean, you can look at the coefficient and remember what Dr. Joginder was saying, or I pointed it out that again you have variable insignificance. What is the meaning of a particular variable or parameter statistically insignificant? Because it's just telling you that, well, that does not have any explanatory power, right? So if it is very small or again, standard error is very high and p-value is high, then you know that, well, that variable is not explaining, and you can get rid of that variable. Right? But there are some standard things that everybody will agree. Okay. So you just look at those variables and then again go back to this. I mean, if you are dealing with cross section, so again you write down the model like this. Okay. So now instead of investment, you are just saying that your number of rapes, and then again the rest variables are number of police, and then again unemployment and things like that. Okay. And then you have V and U as usual. If you think that, well, in this again, I'm just saying that, well, that's not inefficiency, so that's kind of underreporting. So underreporting, if you think that it depends on some other variables which are not in here, okay, then you can also add those things. Now, if you have a panel, then again you can add, let's say, well, you have a state, and it's a panel. So you want to include state effects, right? Remember, I was talking about especially Bihar, but again, you can say that, well, every state has a different effect. It's not necessarily Bihar, but again, you just look at Haryana, Punjab, West Bengal, or whatever state you have data on. So again, you can control for the state effects, right? Because things are going to be different for different states for lots of reasons. Okay? You cannot explain why Bengalis behave differently from Punjabis or again people from Haryana. Okay, but sometimes we just say that yes, I see that they are behaving differently. I don't know why. I cannot explain it, but I know that they are different. So this is basically is controlled by alpha I. Okay? Because again, the good thing about it is that you don't need to know what are the variables in there. Okay, you can just with the panel, you can estimate them as fixed parameters or a random variable. Okay, and then again, if you think in terms of this underreporting has again two parts. One is time invariant and the other one is time varying. Then you can just split it into these two parts, and again go ahead and do this thing. So from modeling point of view, see that, well, there is nothing new. But again, this paper that I am talking about, this investment underreporting, this paper got very, well cited because of the fact that, well, Hung Jin Wang is one of my co-authors for the book. He was the first to talk about this. So the stochastic frontier model that he used was not new. Everybody knew about it. But because of the fact that I used the tool in a particular situation, and everybody was kind of interested in knowing that, then that's why people were reading the paper and they were citing the paper. So the point is, again, it's not that you have to always think in terms of developing the model. or again like coming up with a new model. I mean, if you can do it, that's fine, but sometimes interesting application can take you quite far. Okay, so that's kind of the reason why I'm just saying that this is important. So again, coming back to crime, I think that has also a potential. I had a PhD student from Chile, so he did get some data from Colombia. Okay, and again, you know that Colombia is famous for crime and that type of thing. So I asked him to get some data, but and he got some data and he wrote a paper, but the data was not that good because it was only a particular district. Okay, we were unable to get the data from different districts. And when you look at a particular district, the socioeconomic variables or X variable that can explain your crime, those variables do not change. Right? Because if you look at unemployment is what? You can get unemployment in Haryana. Right? But if you say that, well, I want to look at unemployment rate in different, say, in a different district in Haryana, it's very difficult to get it, or even if you get it, there will be almost no variation. Right? So the way data is collected is not specific to each district, or again like a particular town in a district, but it's a number for the whole district. Right? So if you have many different districts, not just Haryana, but look at Punjab or again, I mean all the states of India, then again you'll be getting a lot more variation. Okay. So if you can do those type of things, I think that has also a potential of a good publication. And people will be interested in knowing because this is an area which is under researched. People don't do a whole lot of research on crime. There may be some theoretical papers, but empirical papers that are not that many. Okay. So this is crime. Let me just move on to on something in here. So that's wage. Okay. So again, like when you apply for a job, you always say that okay, you have some idea about what type of salary you will be getting, right? So which is what we call reservation wage. Okay. That means in your mind you say, well, okay, how much are you worth? What meaning that in terms of your job, right? But your actual wage or salary that you get is not necessarily the same as your reservation wage. If somebody wants to pay you less than your reservation wage, then you are not going to accept the offer, right? So you will be accepting the offer only when the salary is at least equal to the reservation wage. Now, many cases, if the job market is not competitive, then you might accept an offer where your wage is less than what your expectation is. Given your education and experience, you might be expecting something more, but you are unable to get job offers, so you are accepting a job that pays you less than what you expect to get. So then again, you can make them equal by just adding this U-term. Again, that's not going to be an efficiency, but again, you can say that again, you have to use a particular term that is not too strong. If you use discrimination, that term might be too strong. Okay, you might be saying that, well, look, I'm discriminated against because they are paying me less, right? Less than what I deserve, right? And what you deserve is the frontier, right? So unless you do a very thorough study, then again just look at people, whether a particular race is being discriminated. Sometimes you use male-female, but again, like in India, it's not only male-female. You can talk about different people from different castes. We have what scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and then underprivileged. What are the other classes? Yeah, so OBC, right? So those type of things. So you can bring those variables into the analysis. See, I have never seen any study like that. Okay, all I just see that well from the U.S. or the way we do our teaching is basically male and female. I mean, people are interested in knowing whether females are discriminated against. We all know female wages are less than male wage, even if you control for everything. Okay. And then again, another interesting thing is now last year's Nobel Prize, she was given the Nobel Prize for analyzing these things. I mean, what is happening to a wage gap between male and female? Is it declining over time? Okay. So if you look at Europe, it's declining at a very steady rate. But if you look at US, it's declining, but at a very, very slow rate. Okay. So still, the gap between male and female wages is quite high. Now, whenever we talk about male and female wage, we don't simply compare the wages. We just run a regression controlling for your education, experience, and everything, right? Because females on average will have less experience because of the fact that, well, especially when they have kids, so they drop out of the job market or take a leave and that type of thing. So again, your length of service is going to be less. But education, you have to have the same education, otherwise the comparison is not meaningful. Okay. So that might be also something interesting. Okay. And again, this is not production as such. And again, you may not say that, may not use the word discrimination if you think that that's too strong. But again, if you think that while your study includes almost everything that people can think in terms of that will influence your salary, then you might use the word discrimination. Right? So again, in India, when people think in terms of job production, okay, I don't know what is the reasoning, what sort of reasoning they provide to have quota or reservation for different groups of people.
Yes, sir.
Because they think that, well, they are not, they cannot compete with other people, right? So again, what do you mean by they cannot compete with other people? Any idea when if you want to use the word they cannot compete with the people of other caste, or people in the rural area cannot compete with the people from the cities. So what is the reason or why they cannot compete?
Resources, education, quality education.
Quality of education, okay, or it's not resources directly, quality of education. You can relate it to the resources, saying that, well, if you are from a village, you may not have money to send your kids, or for you cannot come to Delhi or some other places to study because again it's going to be costly. Right? So the quality of education might be affected by the resources, but in the end it's basically the quality of education. So the whole idea, at least from a policy point of view, again, is just to give these people in the villages some opportunity to have a better education. But again, I'm not getting into those type of things. All I'm just saying is that, well, whether there is any difference between this, and then again you can dig into those. What is causing this difference? Okay, because that is going to be more interesting. I mean, sometimes people will say that, well, we all know that again this class has a lower wage, controlling for everything else than the other class. But the question is that, well, what is causing that? Okay. So again, if you have some interesting variable, you can think in terms of resources, or somebody can say, well, quality of education. But quality of education is easy to talk about. But again, coming up with a variable that will say the quality of education. Can I compare quality of education in here in the EU with again like a university or like a Southeast University in Delhi? I mean, can you do that?
Qualitative.
Yes, qualitative. Sometimes you can say that, well, let's just look at some objective measures. Okay, you might be able to get by just saying that, well, what percentage of the students get a job? That might be an indicator of quality. If you have a good quality of education, your students, I mean, if you're looking at the university's point of view, they will be getting job, okay, or their job placement is going to be higher than some other universities. Right? So you might be able to get some variable. I'm not saying that, well, that's definite, but again, like whenever we use those type of variables, some of those are qualitative, but we have to use quantitative. Because in econometrics, again, qualitative things don't come into the picture. I mean, you can just say that, well, your ability or how smart you are, that would be affecting your salary. We all know that, right? But the question is, from an econometric point of view, is that how do you measure your ability or quality and things like that. Okay. So again, you can think in terms of consumption that I mentioned um, uh, in the last session. Okay, let me just go over for a few more minutes. Now again, these are directly not related to production, but maybe also related to something that you might be interested. So one thing that we all talk about is merger and acquisition, right? And that is happening all over. So recently, look at Japan. So the two of the car companies, they I think that's officially merged, right? Okay. So the question is that, well, why do they merge? Okay. Again, there may be many reasons, but you can simply focus on efficiency. So do you think that, well, their efficiency will be improved after merger? Okay. Or what I was talking about Indian banking, that they denationalize. Okay. So the question is what happens to efficiency after denationalization? Okay. So you have data after denationalization, you have data before denationalization. So those type of things can be easy to evaluate instead of the merger in Japan, because they just merged, so there is no data after the merger, right? But if you are looking at the Indian banks for like a denationalization, then you will be able to get data on those variables. Okay. So then again, what you can do is you can run either two regressions, one before, one after, or you can just pull all the data together, and then again in your Q term, that means like you are talking about the effect of merger on, let's say, profitability. You are looking at ROE or ROA, you know those terms, right? Because again, you are in management. So let's say, well, you are running a regression with your ROA or ROE on the left hand side, and then you are explaining it in terms of some other variables. And then again, those variables are not necessarily explaining everything, so there would be something unexplained, and that's going to be captured by the U term. So again, you want to see what is happening to that after banks were denationalized, or those banks who were merged with others. Right? Because that was the focus. I told you that a finance minister made a statement that, well, again, and we were kind of judging that, well, whether there is any truth to her statement in terms of quantification using efficiency. Okay. So, and I told you that we didn't find any support for her statement, meaning that those were done in a very ad hoc basis. Okay. That means, it's just like the way politicians do things. Again, they just do it in a way that may not have anything to do with economics. Okay. So again, like this is merger and acquisition. The other thing is that, well, again, the time duration. Okay. So this happens in the US, or at least the way I interpret. So there are a lot of companies that are merged again, and then again, like a new CEO comes in and that type of thing. So they want to see what is the improvement. That means what is the efficiency improvement. Now what happens is that, well, when two companies merge, a lot of people lose their jobs, right? Because of the fact that, well, let's say, well, you have two like a research division, but after merger you say that, well, look, this is redundant, we don't want to have two, we need only one. So you just keep some people from the first company and some from the second company, and other people are let to go. Right? So the question is, what will happen to the people who are staying in there? They will be under pressure, right? They might be thinking that, well, this might be my turn. So what is the impact of that on your work effort or efficiency? Do you think that you will be working harder? Yes, because you will be working harder because you just said that, well, in the meantime you might be looking for alternative jobs, right? But so long as you are in that company, you will be working a lot harder. So that will also improvement in efficiency. And again, if you follow the statistics, you will see that efficiency improvement is taking place right after merger, right? But then again, if you follow this over time, then again, this efficiency improvement is going down. Why is that? Because that is not sustainable, right? If you put pressure under pressure I can work harder, right? But the question is that, well, that I cannot do for many, many years, right? So this is the reason why efficiency improvement is going down. Now what happens to the CEO? By then the CEO also moves to a different place, right? So the CEO in CEO CV will say that, well, look, this is my record, right? And again, the improvement was remarkable, and everybody will say that, yeah, that's true. But then when it was falling, he said, it is time for me to move, right? So he just goes to another place and does a similar thing, right? So this is also something that you want to examine. What is happening to efficiency gain over time, okay? Sometimes I give some different type of example, which is not economics, but everything in the beginning, right? Even in romance, right? In the beginning, when you get married, again, everything looks rosy and everything is very, very, very nice. But then again, over time, again, things don't look that rosy. But again, you have to include some other things to make things going. Sometimes you have kids, sometimes you have many other things to maintain that relationship. But again, whatever you are looking at, this is the point that I am just making, that over time things tend to go down. Okay, this is just nature. I'm not saying that. Okay, I mean this is for individuals. Right? It's not that everybody gets divorced after a certain point in time. Okay, but that is also something that is happening all over, and even in India, the divorce rate is increasing. Okay, if you look at I'm again not getting into that. What is the cause of it? But I'm just making a statement about time. That means over time, okay, things do change, and you have to include time as one of the variables in your model. Okay, so let me just see how many things I have. Okay, I'll just cover some point. Okay, so subsidy. Something that government of India is doing a lot, right? So whenever something comes, a minister comes in, goes to a village, or they say, well, okay, you guys are not doing well. Okay, I'll make sure that your fertilizer, you pay less for the fertilizer. Meaning that, well, they just subsidize the price, right? So again, you'll be thinking that, well, what is the impact of subsidy? Because remember, when you put a subsidy on something, the effective price of that item is lower, right? So let's the price is W, and then you get a subsidy for per kilo by 5 rupees, then the price is going down. So in a sense, you are artificially changing the price. So when you think in terms of profit maximization, remember the point of tangency that I was showing you, that will change. So because of that, allocation is going to be changing. So if you get a subsidy on fertilizer, you tend to use more fertilizer, right? So again, if you are talking about some other consequences of fertilizer, remember I was talking about bad output, then you might be saying that, well, that's not a kind of a good decision. Right? But again, if you don't want to go in that direction, you want to simply say that I want to find out the efficiency improvement because of giving subsidy. Right? Is there any gain in there? Right? So there might be some gain, there may not be some gain. So I told you that I use data from Norway often. So in Norway, when I was talking to them, that well, in Norway they also give subsidy to farmers, especially the small farmers. And then we were talking about efficiency, and then my co-author said, no, in Norway the subsidy is given not to increase efficiency, but to maintain lifestyle and diversity. Okay, so the government said that, well, we want to have some small farmers, even though they are less efficient than the big farmers. They don't want commercial farmers all over. Right? So then again, they don't expect giving subsidy, meaning that, well, keeping these small guys alive. Okay? Otherwise they won't be. So if you bring Walmart, so then a lot of the small stores will be out of business. Right? So they deliberately want to keep that, and that is kind of the reason for subsidy. So if you look at efficiency improvement, you won't find any, because that was not the objective. The objective is just to maintain a lifestyle. I jokingly just talked to them and said that, well, okay, so you are getting money for the government to drink beer or wine and then watch sunset. But again, that's what it is. Okay, so yeah, I mean this R&D and that type of thing. R&D is the same thing. Because again, like research and development, the idea is that whether the research and development is improving performance. And again, performance, you can just look at not output but ROA or ROE, and then again run a regression on some other variable. And again, your U term in here is again indicating whether merger, R&D is improving your performance measured in terms of ROA or ROE. Right? Now that is also something debatable. Sometimes you can find positive effects, sometimes you find negative effects. Right? But the good thing about stochastic frontier is that you don't have to say that well everybody is getting the same benefit. Right? Because again, we have observation specific estimates. Okay. So what happens with R&D nowadays? Many companies don't have in-house R&D, so they are doing outsourcing. Right? So this is also then you have to look at it whether the outsourcing R&D is better than in-house R&D. So there are again just interesting issues that one can always address. Sometimes I start talking and then things pop up in my head and I stop. Nothing is written in here. But again, those are kind of interesting things that one can look at. Okay, so again, I have some other things, but these are more kind of related to econometrics, which I'm not talking about. Okay, so I am stopping in here, but again, before I stop, I would ask you to think about it, because the next hour, what I'll be asking you is that, well, based on what I have talked about, whatever you have understood, I know that a lot of it might have gone above you, but whether there is anything any question that you would like to ask me, okay? And again, feel free to do that. I mean, I always say that, okay, I mean, no question is a dumb question. You can ask anything that you would like to do. So think about it for the next 10 minutes while taking, is there coffee there or, okay, so while drinking coffee, just think about those things. That would be also helpful to me that, well, okay, I did it for 4 or 5 days and then again I did address those type of things. So next time again I will be careful about those things. So this is kind of educational on my side also. Okay? Okay then, so let's just go for coffee. Think about questions that you might have. Do you have any questions?
No.
Come on, be glad.
No. They are so
So no question? Okay, anyway, I mean, if you don't have any questions, let me show you some more, Stata applications, that thing. I won't be running these models because for some reason I was not able to get the data that are used for this application. Now, is it too small, right? Okay, let me, can you see this? Can you read? No, it's okay. So, some of the things that I'd like to point out is just using the data. So what happens is that, well, you remember last time, Dr. Jaginder was showing you how to import data from Excel. So again, it's better to have the data in the form of a Stata data file. So if you look at this line number 6 in here, okay, so it's a use join data S. That is, this is the Stata data that you can create after the, getting getting the Excel file, okay. So then again, you don't have to go back and look at the data file if you don't want to. But again, if you want to see it, you can always get an idea. So here again, I mean, in this setup, all I'm doing is saying use that data set. So this is again a SCADA data. Okay, this is not an Excel file, but again, if you have an Excel file, you can also use that. And this is again like some I commented out. So when you put a star, that is commented out. So these are some of the variables that we're creating. Okay, based on this is the new data. Okay, so these are different variables that are used, and then again you can just see that well, this is the generation command. Gen ly1 is log of y1, gen ly2. So this is how the different variables are created. Okay, and then if you look at line in here 43, then I'm doing dx2 is lx2 minus lx1 and so on. So d variables are, remember, this is when we were talking about input distance function. I just said one variable on the right hand side are expressed as ratios. So if you want to use x1 on the left hand side or log of x1 on the left hand side, the right hand side x variables are going to be x2 over x1, x3 over x1 and so on. So this is how you create those variables, right? So again, that dx2 is basically log of x2, which is defined in here, minus log of x1. Okay. So then what is going to be happening, I'll be using an input distance function. Okay. And again, I created a variable for output distance function also, right? But again, it depends on what you want to use. Okay. And then there are some z variable, and again debt to asset ratio. So in line 49, yeah, I can see that, right? So again, this is a z variable. That means we are going to be exploring whether the financial situation of the firm, which is given by debt to asset ratio, is playing any role in efficiency. Okay, and then again, like time. Remember, we are putting time variable. Purpose of the time variable is to show whether there is a shift or technical change. If you recall, when I was talking about the TFP decomposition, then one part was technical change, and technical change is represented by a shift in the function. Now there are two ways of doing it. One is to put time dummies, and the other one is to use a continuous variable. I prefer to use continuous variable because again, like you can take a derivative, and that will show you, the magnitude of the shift. Okay. And then again, Dr. Jaginder was talking about it also in the last session, that instead of adding all those variables, you can make a list. So again, you can use a global command. So global y variable, you can just have one or two. Again, in this case, again, it's not necessary. If you have only one, then there is no need to define global y variable. But global x list, again, you have lx1 all the way to lx5, and then again z list, I have only one, but again you can have more than that. So again, like this global command will create this list variable, and then again you can change the name. Remember, x list, z list, and again if you think in terms of running several models, you can with different x variables, then you can just say that x list 1, x list 2, and that type of thing. Okay. Now, this is in this particular formulation. So again, this is SF model, the type of thing that is used in the book. Okay. So if you want to use this one, this is not SF cross. Okay, so I'd like to point that out. And I told you there are many different ways, even in SCADA, where you can use stochastic frontier. So SF model is the command that is used in the book. Okay, and if you want to use that, again, everything that is in the book can be downloaded freely. Okay, so again, let's look at the sequence of things in line 66. So you have SF model, that's kind of the command. You are asking the computer to use that particular command. That means whatever is in SF model is going to be, you're asking the computer to get to this. And then your y variable. So if you are a list, then you have to put a dollar sign in front of it. If it is not a list, then again you can just have LY1, okay? And then again see that well this is orientation, again here it says production. So the orientation is output oriented. So we are not saying that well orientation O, but simply saying production, okay? If it is a cost, then again you just replace production by cost, meaning that well is V minus U right now, but again V plus U, when you say cost model or input distance function, you have to put a plus sign. So that would be represented by changing this production to cost. And then this is distribution, H is abnormal, and again this is the frontier function. So you are writing frontier, okay, and then X list. That means the frontier function f of x has these variables that are listed in here, and you go back and then see that well, what are the variables in the list. So you have log of x1 to log of x5. Those are the variables in the list. And then again these two other things, U sigma, that is your sigma square U, and V sigma, sigma square V. And now inside the parenthesis there is nothing. That means these are random variables, there are no determinants of inefficiency. Okay? Now we can easily change those things, like if you put in here Z or $Z list, then again it will be going over and then finding out that Z variable or Z variables, and they are going to be used as determinants of inefficiency. Now we have not mentioned this thing, sigma V can be also, you can put some variables in there. So that would be what we call heteroscedasticity. Okay, so these variables can be anything. So one thing that is, I would like to focus that this X list, if you want, you can put this X list variables in here also, in two places, because this is not a linear regression. But what we encourage people that well, you think in terms of variables that can explain inefficiency, and those variables should be variables other than x or other than inputs. So for example, in our case, we were thinking in terms of using this debt asset ratio. Okay. Now these things, this is 67 and 68, you can ignore those things. But sometimes when it's difficult to get convergence, we start with giving some initial values. So in a nonlinear estimation, okay, you will be better off if you start with some given initial values, because the parameters, okay, will start from somewhere. In OLS, you don't need to get an initial value because you have a closed form solution for OLS. But in a maximum likelihood, there is no closed form solution. So this is you have to start from somewhere and then you get it. Just like hill climbing. Think in terms of climbing a hill, and you get to the top, so you go from somewhere, right? You don't go to the top right away. So you start from somewhere and then gradually climb all the way to the top. Okay. So it would be better if the starting point is not somewhere very far. Okay. I mean, most of the time it doesn't matter, but I'm just saying that well, you can be or the number of iterations can be fewer if you start with some initial value that are not way too far, or you think in terms of not a smooth thing. So you're looking at a hill, and again it's not like this, not smooth in a ascent. Okay, there are some dips, and you might fall into the dips, right? And the algorithm tries to go and pass this dip, but again it's stuck in there, right? So if it happens, then again it will go again and try to increase the step size, but sometimes again it's unable to get out of that path. Okay. And then the 68 is also something like search. It's asking the computer to search. But again, the 67, 68, you can definitely ignore. And then again in 69, he's just saying that well, you do maximum likelihood. Okay. Can you guys in the back stop talking, and either you go out and talk, or just if you stay inside, then you need to stop talking. So 69 is saying that ML is maximum likelihood, Okay, you're maximizing that. And again, these are some other comments that are related to convergence. So how do you know that you are on the top? Okay. So what happens that, well, if you take a small step to the left or right, there will be no change, right, in the value of the objective function, meaning that value of the likelihood function. So again, you can set these things very small to indicate that, well, you are literally at the maximum, right? You are not again like far from it. But again, you can ignore those things completely. I mean, sometimes people change these things, make them smaller to get a quick convergence. Okay. Okay, so this is the key thing. This 66. This is the SF model, and then again like so this is maximizing the likelihood function to get your parameter estimates, and then again like we are calculating efficiency or inefficiency. So again like I put star, meaning that, well, it is not a command. It's just kind of a I mean it's a command line for you to read that, well, what you did in that. Okay. So then again, like this is prediction. So again, the predict command is different depending on what you use. Like in SF cross, it was simply predict. But again, like in this code that is associated with the book, it's SF predict. Okay. So if you use predict, you will come up with an error because SF predict command goes with a different different package that is SF cross. Okay. So again, if you follow these things, again everything would be fine. No, there will be no error. Okay. And then again we have both LGL-MS. So this is John-Drew, Label, Medorov, and Spick. So that this is estimating inefficiency, expected value of U given epsilon. So remember I just showed you that this is the formula that is used to estimate inefficiency. And then again so this is the name that is used, again like a long name, but again like you can just make it put any name you want. So JLMS tells the computer that you are looking for estimates of inefficiency, and then inside the parenthesis is the name. Okay. And then again like after space is a BC. So this is kind of associated with the estimate of efficiency, e to the power minus u, and then again inside the parenthesis is the name for that. Okay. So then again after that you can just do a histogram or summary statistics, whatever you want to do. And again this is going to be in the memory, so again you don't have to do right away. You can do some other things and then you go back and say, oh, I forgot to get the summary statistics. So you can just type sum and the name of the variables. So it can be done at any point in time. Okay. And then again, like going further, so now this is the SF model. See that we have the command line that SF model with truncated normal distribution, and mu is parameterized by Z. So you have mu. Remember what Dr. Jagindar was talking about. That means he had E mean, right? So the mean, but we are just saying that, well, the mean is not a constant. It's a function of some other variable. So the model can be very complex. You can have the mean function of Z variable. You can have the variance function of the Z variable. Okay. So this illustration says that, well, so SF model distribution, and see that, well, this is T. T for truncated normal. Okay. Frontier is the same X variable that goes in the frontier, and mu, that's kind of the mean. So instead of E mean, the command here is mu. Okay. And again inside the parenthesis say that, well, this is the Z variable. You can have one, we have one in this example, but you can have a list, meaning that, well, you can have many Z variable in there. And then U sigma and B sigma. Okay. So again, like there is nothing in there, but again you can put your Z list in here as well as in here, or some other variables if you want to. And then again in here it says production. So the model is production. Okay. Not a cost. So you have to tell again, if you forget to do that and you run it, it will say that, well, it will come up with an error message saying that you forgot to mention whether it's going to be a cost model or production model. Okay. I think one is default, that may be production. So if you want to write production, it will work because it by default is the production model. Okay. Okay, so see that well, I mean SF initial value, I just commented it out. Okay, and again you can comment out this one, and then again ML max, and then again you have the same command before, but again like, if you don't want these extra things, the program will still run and it will give you the estimates. Okay. So now again, you can do the same thing, calculate inefficiency or efficiency. So now SF predict, the same command as before, and then again the JLMS. So this is EFF and see that T, so that I can distinguish the names. So there's two names. This is H to indicate that well, this is inefficiency estimates coming from half normal. Okay. Now here we're just saying that okay, this is a T coming from the truncated normal distribution. Okay. Because if you put the same name, well it will work, but then again you cannot call the previous one back, right? Because that is going to be replaced by the new one. Right? So it's better to change the name so that you can call it at any point in time. Okay, what is next? And then again BC, this is efficiency estimate. Again you can see that I will put T in there. To separate it from this one which has H. Right? So this is abnormal, this is truncated normal. So just a different name. You can just say that efficiency 1, efficiency 2 and that type of thing. So it's up to you, the way you feel comfortable. Okay, just to show all those things because again Dr. Janinder has shown you only half normal, he was doing only truncated normal, but then again I asked him to change that to abnormal, that was also working. But again now I'm just showing that I started with abnormal, then I went over to truncated normal. Now let's just look at this exponential. So the SM model with exponential distribution. So again you do the same command in here, this is the difference. So dist and then this is E. So this is saying that well the distribution for inefficiency is exponential, okay? And then again, this is a little bit annoying because we keep on changing this thing. So frontier part is exactly the same, but for some reason, U sigma and V sigma is exactly the same. But instead of E sigmas, it's written as etas, E-T-A-S, okay? So again, you have to know exactly the same, the sequence of commands. I mean, if you use U sigmas in here, it won't work because for some reason, for exponential, the name is changed from U sigma to etas. Okay. But again, this part is associated with the one-sided error term, and this is the two-sided error term. And then again, see that well now I suppress both the commands, that is the initial value and search. Okay. If you do search, then you will see the graphs coming one after another, and sometimes I find it's annoying. I want to let it run. I don't want to see what the computer is doing inside. Okay, so you go to 92, and then in there you just simply say that well, you just maximize the likelihood function and get the parameter estimates. Okay, so then again you calculate efficiency or inefficiency. Now here the commands are exactly the same. So if you look at line 96, JLMS is the estimate of U, and then again inside the parenthesis is the name that you are giving. So that's I think it should not be efficiency. You might just say inefficiency, but it's up to you. And then the second one is like the Bettis query, so that's efficiency. So we're done with 3 different things. And then again you can say the well sum. We look at 98, and again you have the estimates of efficiency coming from 3 different distributions, right? So you can just see whether the distribution assumption is making things different, right? Sometimes you want to see that, because people will say that well, whether your estimates of efficiency or inefficiency are driven by distributional assumption. Okay, so in order to answer that question, you might be better off by just saying that, well, look, I ran all the models with 3 different distributions and these are my results. Okay. Okay, any question up to now? So again, this is basically continuing with what Dr. Jaginder was talking about, but now I'm giving you the full list, meaning that all the distributions. Okay. And the basic thing is maximizing the likelihood function and then predicting the estimates of inefficiency. And then again, instead of sum, you can do histogram for each of those just to get a better picture, because if you do sum, summary statistics is just giving you the mean and then again like the maximum, minimum and that type of thing. But sometimes you want to see a little bit more, not just the mean, because if you're thinking of 2 variables, they might have the same mean, but their distributions might be very different. So when you look at the histogram, that gives you a better picture. Okay. So now let's just think in terms of using distance function. We talk about distance function, and that is the case when you have more output. Okay. So again, you have 2 outputs in this example, and then again, like if the dependent variable is log of y1, and remember, if you have 2 outputs and you are using output distance function, then you have to use the other output normalized by the first one as an additional regressor. So if you look at this one, okay, so you have the X list. Here I changed that X list. You have LX1 all the way to LX5. So you have 5 different inputs, and see that dy2. So what is dy2? It's log of y2 minus log of y1. So you can go back and look at the definition of this. So this is kind of like y tilde, the way the notation that I introduced. So if you have more than one output, the right hand side should include the output variables normalized by the first output. Okay. So that has to be defined, and again, like it has to be included in your X list. So again, in addition to the X variables, you are adding this dy2. You can do dy3 if you have 3 outputs, right? So the number of outputs does matter from the computation point of view. And then again, you just go to abnormal distribution. So again, what do you think will change? Do you expect to see any change in terms of the codes? No, because you put dy2 in the X list, right? So you basically copy all the lines that we had before, but remember this time when you look at the output, there would be again like a variable dy2 and there will be a coefficient for that. So that is the only difference. You are adding one extra variable in your regression, meaning that what in your frontier function. And then again, for doing efficiency or inefficiency estimate, it's exactly the same. So as I predict the LMS and efficiency DH, D for distance function, H for abnormal, and then again like efficiency DH, BC. So this is kind of, first one is JLMS is for inefficiency and BC is for efficiency. Okay. So again, like this is how you do things. And then again, I put this I am sometimes lazy, so if you put something that the computer doesn't recognize, it will stop it there. And I just put AAA, just saying that well, the computer does know what it is. I'm asking the computer not to read the rest of it, so you stop it there. Okay. But then again, if you continue looking at these things, again, you can just see that again, this is the example of truncated normal. So what you are seeing that, oh, okay, the one other thing you want to do, so let me go back in here. So this SI model in here, so this is a abnormal distribution. This is for the output distance function. If you want to do input distance function, then what? Then your X list would be completely different, right? So X list will be what you want to keep X1 on the left hand side, okay? And then again, other X's have to be normalized by X1, right? So remember in the very beginning, I defined dx2, dx1, dx3. So these are going to be log of x2 minus log of x1. log of x3 minus log of x1, okay. So you put x1 on the left hand side, and the right hand side x's are going to be, again, in the ratios of each and every x normalized by the first one, and y's are going to be unaffected. So this the list that you had for distance function in here. So this list is for output distance function. So if you do input distance function, then this is going to be dx1, dx1 is basically 0. So dx2, dx3, dx4, dx5, and then again instead of dy2, you will have y1 and y2, two different outputs. Right? So and then the rest of it is exactly the same. So the only difference is that, okay, you have to say that was this production, so you have to change that to cost, okay, because now this is input distance function. And why you need to change it to cost, or why there will be a plus sign? Because if there is inefficiency, your input use is going to be more than what is needed, right? What is the minimum? So that's kind of the intuition. That means you need to put a plus, because in a input distance function, your input is on the left hand side, so the inputs are going to be used more than the minimum amount that you need to produce the given level of output. Okay. So then again, you can see that, well, it's not only production function and cost function, but input distance function, output distance functions are basically, again, can be estimated exactly in the same way. With z variable, without z variable, the only thing that you do is this u sigmas in here. Okay, you put the z variable that you want to input in your model. Okay, and then again, like these sigmas, I didn't mention it again. I just told you that you can put also some variables to indicate that, well, the variance of the noise star is not IID, it is heteroscedastic, and the variable that you put in there will be expanding heteroscedasticity. Okay, so that kind of gives you the entire picture. And then again in the morning, the first session, what I was talking about, this is non-standard application, that will fit in there too, right? All you do is that, remember, in your head you say, well, look, we were talking about output, this is not output anymore, this is investment, and then again, like the right hand side variables are the variables that can explain your investment behavior. So no matter what you do can be fitted into this type of thing. So the first setup is very, very simple. If you want to follow the model that we discussed, then again you don't have to do a whole lot. Okay, you can use the standard codes to estimate all those things. Okay. So then again, like I just said, that when it comes to showing you how to do things, I mean, one session is sometimes more than enough to do it. Again, I'm not running these things because if I try to run it, I think the data that is in here that is too old, for some reason SCADA is not reading it, and I cannot find out what is the problem. So this data is there in my computer, right? But for some reason it comes up with a message that, well, it is not a SCADA data set. I don't know whether it's because of the fact that this is 10 years old. That means this data I created 10 years ago, and again the way the SCADA is formatting the data recently might have changed. That's why it's not reading. So my SCADA is 16 versus this is the latest, right? 16, whereas this data set that I created, it was up in 2011. Okay, so I think that might be the reason. I mean, I can try and see what happens. But this is what happened in the morning. For more than 1 hour last night, I was saying that the internet there is so slow, and even though it doesn't require any internet connection, because this is using the data inside the computer, and then the software is in the computer. But look, I mean, there is nothing, no response. Okay, it's supposed to run it, and I don't see an indication of it running. Is it? Yeah, see that file and this data set is not SCADA format. So my guess is that, again, this is kind of the old format. This is static data set, there's no doubt. I mean, that's why I was saying that, well, if you have any data set that you are using for your research or you have access to it, we could have used it. But anyway, you know this thing because Dr. Jaginder was showing you in terms of some data, but he was not running it. I could run it in my computer, but unfortunately, I don't have the particular data set that I am, the codes are ready. So if I change that, that means I have to change everything. It should take time. Okay, so any further questions? You should have some questions, right? I mean, this, I mean, you might be afraid to ask, but again, I'm just telling you that, well, you don't have to be afraid. And this is the culture. I mean, I know that, I have gone through the same thing. I did my master's, from Kolkata, but I don't think at that stage I asked any question. So this is sometimes, and again in the college, somebody outside came to give a seminar, and the principal was saying that, okay, why didn't you ask any question? Nobody was asking any questions. I don't think that, well, we didn't have any questions, but for some reason, it's when you listen or when you say the professor is saying, so he or she must be right on everything, right? But the first thing that I just say in the US that, yes, I'm a professor, but I don't think that, well, whatever I'm saying is always right. If you have doubt, you should express it. And then again, the things have changed so much, at least for me, maybe this is kind of accumulative or cumulative effect. Because many years I didn't ask any questions, so if I'm in a seminar, I sit down for 10 minutes and I cannot stop asking questions. So it's impossible for me to listen without asking questions. Sometimes I ask too many questions in a conference. There is always a limit. I mean, you cannot monopolize and ask too many questions. But if something is kind of itchy on my side, I feel like asking questions or sometimes too many questions. So yeah, feel free. No question at all?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. So you're just arguing like when our principal says that no questions, because the professor explained it so well that we don't have any questions. Sometimes it might be true, the subject matter you don't know, and again, your explanation or the professor explained in a way you said that, well, yeah, it looks perfectly clear to me, and I don't have that. So the way we start in the US is, in order to do research, you have to start with a question. Maybe that the person got a Nobel Prize, but that doesn't mean that, well, everything he or she is saying that, we're not talking about right or wrong, but you might say that, well, yeah, I mean, I can look at it differently. I think instead of asking the question. Okay? So it looks like time is up.
Dedicated and insightful lecture. I hope all the participants have learned so much from you. Now your test will be conducted, okay? And we will distribute the sheet to you. There will be 2 sheets and it is an objective type question paper test, okay? Only 10 questions are there and very easy questions also. You can answer it if you heard these lectures very carefully, okay? So I hope you will mark up to 100. Okay? Okay, Manisha will distribute, okay?